Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome back. I am Elizabeth. This is Reading Wryly, and today I'm going to talk to you about all of the books that I read in December, the last month of 2022. It was a bit of a weird reading month. I felt like I was starting to get slumpy, and then I kind of got pulled back out of it. I actually asked you guys for some recommendations on my Instagram, and y'all pulled through for me. So it ended up ending on a better note than it started. Ultimately, I didn't have any books that I disliked by any means, but most of them I would recommend, but didn't blow me away. But I think some of these y'all are going to enjoy more than I did because I didn't enjoy them for very specific reasons. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Let me tell you about the breakdown of my books. I read 9 books in December. One of them I'm not rating. And we'll get into that. I did finish it. It's not a DNF, but it touts itself as fiction, and I don't consider this fiction. We'll get into that. Then I read 5 3.5 star books. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? And then I have 3 4-star books. So, like I said, everything is kosher, did not dislike anything, but you know, it's all kind of in that middle avenue. So as usual, I will tell you about them starting with my least favorite of the month and all the way up to my favorite book that I read this month. I'll separate them down in the chapters below to help you navigate this video a little bit more easily. But before we get into the books, I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about this little green shot. Vitamita Vegemin. Just kidding. It is, it's Magic Mind, you guys. It's the cutest little bottle you've ever seen in your life, first of all. It's a productivity shot. This little shot, Magic Mind, I feel like it's made for me, and I feel like it might be made for you guys too. I've been taking this for 3 days now, and I notice especially today, this does have an accumulative effect. I am feeling centered and focused. I'm feeling relaxed. Usually in a situation like this, and I say like this, meaning I actually got up early. I worked out before work today. I'm filming this on my lunch break. I only have a certain amount of time to get it done, and I'm not super stressed about it right now. If I don't get it done, I'll figure it out. I'm also not like jittery or like tweaky. I feel focused and like ready, just ready to get stuff done right now. So I think this could actually be something that's really great for y'all as well, since it's helping me. But this little thing, there's so much packed into here. It's got matcha, it gives you energy, but it's not the kind of energy like regular caffeine where a couple hours later you crash. And then it's also got adaptogens in here which help you relax. So if you're a little bit anxious like I am, this might do the trick for you as well. And then it has nootropics in here that keep you focused. So it's got a little bit of everything. If you do not like it, if you're not satisfied, you can send it back with no questions asked. It's not just academia, it's not just finance that needs help focusing. It's regular people like you and me who are creative types but sometimes need a little bit of extra push, who may have a little bit of anxiety and need to relax. And so yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun, cool product. I'll follow up with you guys and let you know how it goes on my journey. I love that it's like an experiment. You know I love an experiment. So far, paying off. I'm gonna have the link down here below in the description box. I also have a promo code ReadingWryly20 where you can get 20% off. You can also get up to 43% off your first subscription for the next 10 days. So if you're interested in trying this, go down, click that link, check it out. It's so freaking cute. Anyway, let's move on to the books for today. The first book I'm going to talk to you guys about is a little bit different from what I normally read, but it's totally on track. It's on brand for me for sure. And it's called Walden Two. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's a fictional utopian book written by famous scientist and psychologist B.F. Skinner. I was interested obviously for the psychological perspective of this and also just the idea of a utopia, because you know I love a dystopia, and so I thought, well, maybe I like a utopia too. So far, not for the same reasons. Not for the reasons I wanted to anyway. I found this interesting. If you're not aware who B.F. Skinner was, he was, like I said, a famous scientist and psychologist, but also a radical behaviorist, thinks that free will is an illusion and that all of our behavior is based on our environment and only measurable things around us. It's more of a scientific approach to like personality, although he didn't necessarily even believe in personalities, because just that word kind of insinuates that it's coming from within and not from the environment. So really interesting guy. Generally speaking, he had this idea. If everybody were willing, and this is going to sound very socialist, I guess, but if everybody would be willing to give up some of these liberties that we have, we could really save the world if we built this community and everyone could be happy, everyone could be healthy. We could take care of each other, we could save the environment, we could do all of these things, but it's going to take people giving up certain liberties in order to accomplish that. And so he wrote this book based on that idea, based on that utopian society. And it's supposed to be a novel, but really what this is it's just him touting his ideas. The whole book is this group of people go to this community. It's called Walden Two. They're interested in checking it out. There's this other guy, Fraser, who shows them around. He's like the inventor of this community. And the whole book is just this guy saying, yeah, but what about this? And then Fraser saying, but this, good sir, but this, good sir. And so I don't think if you're interested in this as a work of fiction, that this is going to do anything for you at all. If, however, you are interested in the idea behind this, the psychology behind it, and this kind of behavioral system that actually I do think would be effective, personally, then you may be interested in checking this out. I enjoyed it from a scientific perspective. I enjoyed it from a psychological perspective. I thought it was just an interesting idea, but I'm kind of annoyed at him just off the bat for trying to tout this as a work of fiction, because no, it's not. There's no plot. There's nothing that happens except him telling you about his thing. It's like he is manipulating an entire genre of fiction like he would a behavioral contingency in order to tout his ideas on a wider audience. And so don't get caught up in that if you're not interested in the science of it. So for that reason, I didn't rate this, because I see this as a work of nonfiction. And at that, I wouldn't give it 5 stars, but still very interesting and interesting ideas. This guy's a genius. He's just not a novelist. So let's move on to my 3.5 star books. First, I want to start off by talking about Stay Awake by Megan Golden. I put off reading this book for a long time because I heard a lot of negative reviews about this. But you know what? I enjoyed this. I had a good time with it. Not only that, but the audiobook is narrated by Imogen Church and January Lavoie, which are two really, really great audio narrators. So that alone, whether or not the story is actually good, I know I'm going to get a story that's told in a way that is entertaining, well done, and it's going to live up to its potential at the very least. This does have a detective element in it, lending it to more of like a crime thriller, which I know some people don't like. I personally do like that. I don't like it all the time. I feel like those kind of stories tend to have a very specific breakdown and there's very little to interchange within it, but I did really like it in this case. We're following Liv, who has memory problems. Every time she falls asleep, she loses 2 years of her life. She wakes up, she's in the backseat of a cab, and she looks down at her arms. She's got "Don't fall asleep" or "Stay awake" written all over her arms, and she has a bloody knife in her hand. She doesn't know what she did. She doesn't know where she is, and she has to untangle her life. The story in general is told in kind of a wonky timeline, and that adds to the suspense of it and the mystery because you kind of get thrown off a little bit for the twist. And then we're also following a detective who's on the case who found this man murdered, and it really looks like she has something to do with this, like Liv had something to do with this. The premise, A+, love the premise of this. I had a good time throughout the story. I'm missing a little bit of the social commentary that I got from her last book that I really enjoyed. This felt like it was just kind of like something that would be fun for her to write and fun to delve into and fun to read along with, and it was. It's not anything that's spectacular or crazy different, although it does have that interesting premise. If you've seen the movie Memento, it's kind of similar to that, but we're playing with that unreliability of the narrator. So it's fun, it's fast-paced. The reveal felt a little bit lackluster for me. I would have liked just a little bit more of the loose ends being tied up to really understand the motives of some of these characters. But other than that, it took me for a ride and I had fun with it. 3.5 stars. The next book I want to talk about, I feel like I'm going to make some people angry here because this book has just gotten rave reviews. I'm not saying I didn't like it. I did like it. I liked all of these books, but it just wasn't really my thing. And that's Slewfoot by Brahm. I know, don't come at me, please. So many people love this book, which is why it was so hard for me to review this, because personally, it wasn't for me, but I see the merit there. I see the talent. I see the creativity. Like, I respect this book. Hardcore respect this book. So if you haven't heard of this, this is kind of a tale of bewitchery, and it's set in not Pilgrim days, Puritans. There's like Puritans and magical forest creatures. Brahm created his own illustrations of the characters inside the book, so I had the physical copy and the audio as I read it and got to look at the pictures as I went, and it was the perfect combination. I would absolutely recommend reading it that way. The art is fantastic. It's beautiful. The characters had depth. I definitely connected to them after a while. And I don't want to discredit this author's achievement in any way, but I do think that we should rate books based on our own personal experience, and that way, if everybody does that, the overall Goodreads score is more well-rounded, which is why I gave it a 3.5. I just personally don't really connect with the old-timey Puritan forest creature type scenario. Like, that's just not really my thing. It felt old-timey, like I said, and it's just not something that I'm super into. Also, there's a lot of talk about the devil. I don't personally believe in the devil, and so maybe I didn't find that quite as spooky as some other people might. Though sometimes I can get sucked into a possession story, and I don't believe in that either. So it's hard to say what I didn't quite connect to. It felt a little bit long for me on top of that, and maybe that's part of the reason why. But if you like that, if you want to read about forest creatures and the devil and
Goody Proctor with the devil and Goody
whoever with the devil, that Salem witch type vibe, then I think you would absolutely love this story. And I think I would definitely recommend you picked it up. Yeah, I think it's a me thing. I think it's absolutely a me thing. And on top of that, I'm not saying I dislike this book. I still liked the book. Just wasn't quite perfection for me. Okay, the next book I want to talk to you about is an interesting one. I think I actually first heard of this one from Brandon Baker on TikTok. I decided to check it out. I got the audiobook for it, and it's called Theme Music. This is by T. Marie Vandelli. I believe it is her debut novel from a few years ago. It's a really, again, interesting premise. We're following this girl, Dixie. When she was just 1 year old, her dad killed her entire family in their kitchen, and she was the only survivor. When they found her, there was this song playing called Baby Blue. She forever from then on was referred to by the media as Baby Blue in this infamous case about her family and the murder. So you kind of have this true crime aspect. That aspect of it really reminds me of Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. In fact, a lot of the writing reminded me a little bit of Gillian Flynn too, which makes me excited. There's also this kind of is it or is it not paranormal aspect, which also has a little bit of Dark Places, but also a little bit of an Amityville horror situation, also with the family slaughtering. You get it. She's grown up now, and she's got a partner in her life that she loves and cares for. It's the first relationship in her life that she really feels is worth something. And then she decides though,
hey, I want to move back into that house that my family all died in. So I'm going to do that.
And then when her partner, her boyfriend, objects to that, she just does it anyway. Once she moves in, weird stuff starts happening. Really weird stuff. She starts to really delve into this case in a way that she never had before. And so there are some really interesting turns of events within there. Sorry, I had to readjust. So the part of that just doesn't quite sit right with me is the premise itself, that she's finally found this person in her life that is perfect for her. She has this connection to another human being, and yet she's willing to give that up in order to move back into this house against the advice of literally everybody that she knows. Like, that draw there, like, I understand wanting to look into the case, but wanting to live there, and then when she moves in, she kind of resets it up and she becomes obsessed with setting it up how it was. And that is kind of explained as this kind of paranormal aspect. I just don't buy that completely, but I will say I love the writing. I love the inner monologue. It's told in a first person account, and the thoughts that she had in her head at times just made me laugh out loud. I just related to her a lot. I thought she was like a real character, cool character, somebody that I would hang out with and be friends with. I think that's part of the reason it gave me that Gillian Flynn vibe, and I really enjoyed the writing style, and I would definitely read more from this author. So I'm really looking forward to what else they come out with, especially because this is a debut. It's impressive, awesome premise. I didn't love the ending and kind of how it went, but generally it felt really fresh. The tone of it I really liked. So looking forward to see what else this author comes out with. My next book I want to talk to you about is Kindred by Octavia Butler. I finally read this book and it is great, okay? And I feel like I have to keep justifying myself over and over with these because these are all good books and I'm giving them all 3.5 stars just because it could be me. It could just be me. You know, I could have been slumpy and it's on me. This one, I think because it was a little bit out of date, it was just a little bit harder to connect with because this is a huge book. If you don't know of Kindred, it is the first sci-fi book written by a Black woman. And it's chronicling the life of this woman who accidentally keeps going back in time. This was written in the 70s, I believe, or the early 80s, I'm not sure, but her current timeline is in the 70s. And then she gets sent back to antebellum South. You can imagine the horror that would come with having been sent back in time to an era in our country when slavery is legal and normal. Terrible things, terrible things happen to them. So there's a lot of social commentary in here that I loved. Her name's Dana, our protagonist. When she realizes that she's being sent back, I think it's like 1800s, 1815, I think it was. She wants to make changes for the better, but she also is conflicted because she realizes that these people that she's interacting with may or may not be her ancestors. And so she has to make sure that she ensures her own lineage so that she is actually born. So there's, you know, perfect premise as far as like plot and high pressure, high stakes setup right off the bat. Love that. Started off really strong, and there are some really gruesome aspects in there. Great social commentary. I just didn't connect with it, I think, for the specific reason that it's just an older book. Now, that being said, they just released the adaptation. Is absolutely fantastic. It's updated and completely fresh, completely new. They've changed some of the characters' relationships to each other, but I think all of the changes they made just really worked for current day and current time. There's an inclusion of cell phones in there, obviously, and so it felt more like I was able to connect with it. Loved the adaptation, highly recommend that, and the book as well. I'm so glad I read it. It's very important work of literature, work of fiction, work of sci-fi, for the Black community and for everyone. And so I highly recommend you pick this one up, especially if you're interested in watching the adaptation. Read the book first because it's always better, but the adaptation in this case, very good as well. I'll say that. The next book I read is going to be another 3.5 stars, but again, I'm conflicted. It's The Audition by Ryu Murakami. This also has a very infamous adaptation, movie adaptation that I think was made in the 90s, which I also watched after I read this book. And the combination of reading the books, watching the adaptation together, it just does it for me. I love it. It's a good time. It's interesting because it's a very short book, first of all, so it's quick to get through. I listened to the audio. The audio was great. We're following this man who lost his wife 7 years ago. And so it's just him and his son. His son tells his dad,
hey, maybe it's time for you to move on. Like, you're sad.
And this guy is a retired documentarian, I believe. So he's been in like the movie scene, the movie world, and his best friend comes up with this wonky scheme to go ahead and hold an audition for his wife. The women who are auditioning don't know that it's to be his wife. They think they're auditioning for this movie, but they set it up in this way that they're attracting women who aren't necessarily actors, but who maybe would want to take a chance from this. He specifically wants someone with classical training of some sort, whether it be piano or dance or some kind of art or something like that, because he thinks that it makes them more refined and more cultured and more confident. It's set up like a romantic comedy. If you didn't see the cover of this book, and if there wasn't such thick foreshadowing throughout this entire book, you might think it was a romantic comedy. But it's clear this is going to end horribly. This is a horror book. But for most of the story, you're with him as he sees this one woman who he kind of gets this infatuation with, and their relationship moves forward, and it goes to shit. It reminds me of Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. So if you liked that book, you probably like this one. Most of it is just normal, them getting to know each other, but because there's that foreshadowing, there's that added level of suspense, and so that whole first portion of the book, I just was glued to it. I was like, okay, but when's it coming? The horror aspect doesn't come to the very, very end, but when it hits hard. Hits really hard. So if you're interested, I think you would probably like this one, especially if you liked that Eric LaRocca book. Oh, yay. So we're moving on to my 4-star books now. I have 3 of them. The first one, I'm just going to get out of the way because I can't tell you much about it, but I did finish Karen Slaughter's Grant County series. Beyond Reach was the last book, number 6 in the series. I finished it. If you don't know, we're following Sarah Linton, who is a medical examiner. She's married to the police chief, Jeffrey Tolliver. There are all kinds of crazy murders in their town. Why are you living there? Get out of there. You need to move out of that city because so much bad shit happens there. If they were smart, they would just leave. But no, they have to deal with murders and crazy shit all the time now. Anyway, finish this. If I didn't love Karen Slaughter so much, we would have to fight. She destroyed me with that ending. Absolutely destroyed me. And she toyed with me just like Karen Slaughter would do. She would. You know what? She would do it like that because she's tricky. You're tricky, Karen Slaughter. I love you. You're tricky and I'm mad at you right now. We're fighting. I'm still going to pick up the Will Trent series. I'm still in love with you, but we're fighting. Let's just leave it at that. My next 4-star book was recommended to me by my friend Emily on Instagram. Thank you so much. I really had a good time with this one. It's called The Body Lies by Joe Baker. Hadn't heard of this one before at all. Decided to give it a shot. Really, really interesting novel. I really don't know what genre to classify this as because it's very kind of like overlapping between different genres. It's thriller adjacent, but not thriller in the way that you would typically expect it to have, like all of these twists. It's literary adjacent in the sense that it has something to say outside of the story itself, and the way that it's told is the most interesting aspect of this. It has a lot to say about women and women's bodies in fiction, and women's bodies in general. We're following this woman. She's been sexually assaulted. She has a toddler, and her son decide it's best for their marriage for her to go accept this job in this small town while he keeps his teaching job in London, so they get split up. And she's teaching a creative writing class at this university. She's interacting with all the kids in her class. They're all submitting their own stories. They're all writing their own novels. And so kind of every other chapter, you get a chapter of their novel. So it's like stories within a story. Then you get the group discussion throughout and how they critique each other. And so you really feel like you're in that class, like you're one of their co-eds, like you're critiquing their work. Not that you submitted anything, but you're just kind of, you're a slacker. You're a slacker. You didn't do the assignment. It's fine. Anyway. They get into this debate where one student thinks that the other student's writing is problematic, that they should have given a trigger warning, and they get into this big discussion about women in fiction. There's this one guy who's really enigmatic and kind of a mystery. He wants to do something that's never been done before, and we don't know if he's just total bullshitting or if he is just really talented. But then he starts to write some things that make our professor, I can't remember her name right now, think that he's talking about her, and it makes her uncomfortable, and it kind of goes from there. I did write down a quote that I'll read to you that I thought just kind of really encapsulated what it's trying to say. And she's talking about one of the students. She says, Karen may not have liked grit, but she did like acid. Her stuff was vinegar sharp. I felt a bit overwhelmed by it, to tell the truth, all the female flesh. All the darkness, too, from this and all the other stories. All these female bodies in flux, dying and decaying, awakening and transforming, washed by floods, ballooning, returning to the womb. And I was struggling with my own question of whether there was a way to write female without writing body, and whether there was a way to be female without being reduced to body. Love that. Love that. So much to say. The ending I felt like could have done a little bit better job of really driving that point home. But overall, I thought this was really underrated. Like, I've never heard people talk about this book. I would definitely recommend this one, especially if you like books that are about writers, first of all, because she's a writer herself, and books that have something to say about feminism. So yeah, good one. And the last book I want to talk to you guys about is White Horse by Erica T. Worth. Again, I believe this is a debut. That's the word. That's the word I'm looking for, debut. It's kind of a play on a ghost story, but it's interestingly told. We're following urban Indian Carrie, and she is just like, she's fucking badass. She is either, okay, here's the thing. She reminds me of me like 7 years ago. Before I became an adult. But except she's like my age now. She's me if I were to have stayed in the service industry. She hangs out at this bar all day. She's a server. And she smokes cigarettes. She drinks whiskey. She's obsessed with horror and Stephen King. I love her character. But she's either like got a really serious Peter Pan complex, or she's like the coolest chick ever, or both. And I don't know which. Probably both. But the thing is, she's got this Peter Pan thing going on because she doesn't want to confront her past. Her mother died when she was like a year old. Her dad subsequently got into this bad car accident and is left disabled, and so she cares for him. And so she can't communicate with him. So when her cousin brings her this bracelet that her mother used to own and she starts having these visions, we don't know what's going on. If this is like a Native American folklore type thing, if she's psychic, if she's seeing ghosts, like what is it? She realizes that she is seeing visions of her mother, but she's also seeing this monster. And so when it opens it up to one thing, it also opens up to the other thing. And she starts delving into her mother's death and to figure out what happened with that. And she has to dive into her past that she so deeply wants to avoid. And she has to continue moving forward with her life. It really gave me The Only Good Indian vibes by Stephen Graham Jones. If you liked that one, I think you would probably like this one as well. There's a part of the book where I actually felt like I was getting a tour of the hotel from The Shining, because she goes on a tour of the hotel from The Shining. She lives in Colorado. It's set in Colorado. All of that Stephen King stuff just keeps me hooked. Again, she's one of those characters that I feel like we'd be friends. Like we'd be chill. There were a couple elements of the writing style that confused me. Like there were a couple times when she would think back on her past and you're not sure if it's like a flashback or if she's telling us the story. Sometimes it was in present tense and sometimes it was in past tense. So I'm guessing like the present tense one where she feels like she's there, I guess. I don't know, like things like that. It was just like a little bit weird. That could have been worked out with a little more editing, but it didn't really bother me that much. Also, the audio narrator, while she was good, the audio narrator, she had some like odd inflections. It was a combination of the way it was written, because the author does like these kind of not run-on sentences, but sentences that have a lot of parts to them. And so as the narrator was narrating them, and she would like pretend like it was the end of the sentence, or at least that's what it felt like for me, and then continue on with the sentence, and it made it confusing for me at times. But as I went on, I got used to it, and I do think she is a good narrator. That could have just been something that she was, like how she was told to read it. I don't know. It's not how I would have read it in my mind. That's the only thing. Generally, I loved the character arc that Carrie goes through, our main protagonist. Really loved her. Thought it was a great story. And I would recommend this for anyone who wants a different kind of take on a ghost story, because it is interesting. Those are all of the books that I read in December. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me this year and the year before. Thank you for still hanging out there with me. Thank you for watching this video to the end. You guys are so sweet. You're the best. You are the best. I appreciate you so much, as always. I really do. Don't forget that, don't me forget. Hey, also, we're reading Mother Thing this month. Shit. Don't forget we're reading Mother Thing this month for the Midnight Society Book Club, which is my new book club. If you don't know about it, I'm going to also link the announcement video down below. And the first month is now. It's January 2023. And we're reading Mother Thing, Ainsley Hogarth, this weird domestic horror story about this woman who's haunted by her husband's mother's ghost. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I'm so excited to read it. Gabby is going to be joining me from Gabby Reads over on my channel for the live show on January 28th at 2 p.m. Central. That's a Saturday. Read the book, buy it, come hang out with us for the live show. Very excited. Also, don't forget, if you're interested in checking out Magic Mind, the link is right down below in the description. It's just a little 2-ounce productivity shot, and so far I'm loving this. I'm going to keep you guys updated. Don't forget my promo code, ReadingWryly20 for 20% off. That's going to be right down below, y'all. Don't forget also that life is short, so read Wryly. Cheers and goodbye!